Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study that is entitled Recommended Reading. And I'm going to recommend to you today that you take time to read the book of Isaiah. Isaiah is the biggest of all the prophetic books, it's the longest, and there's a reason for that. Written in about 740 BC, and perhaps over the next 40 or so years. It is an epic, and we use that word epic just to mean something large or important, but it is an epic in the technical sense. I believe I would call it an epic. It is written in the age when the great Homeric epics were being formed, um, and um, and we're being sung. And Isaiah is itself an epic. It's a salvation epic, which is about God's people, and it tells a similar story on two tracks. One track is the immediate history of God's people. He really spans the reigns of a couple of good kings. One was the best by the Bible's own description. He begins his prophetic work in the reign of King Uzziah in 740 BC. He was a good king, and yet in his career, he tried to usurp the role of the priest. God gave him leprosy, and he died. And it was a terrible thing for the faithful to lose a king that had respected God the way Uzziah had before he didn't. But then they ended up having Hezekiah, who reigned for a long time, and who was, according to both Kings and Chronicles, better even than David, in that he tore down every aspect of idolatry in the kingdom, even destroying the bronze serpent that Moses had made, because people were worshiping it in an idolatrous way. But Assyria is on the horizon. During his lifetime, Assyria will invade. Assyria will carry away in 722 the northern kingdom into captivity. And when they invade the northern kingdom, the northern tribes, they keep coming to the southern tribes, and they destroy everything in their path all the way to the walls of the city of Jerusalem. And Isaiah himself, in chapters 35, 36, I believe, tells the story in more detail than we get in Chronicles and Kings, because he was there for all of it. And he saw all of it. He was an eyewitness to this moment in history. And it's only when Hezekiah prays to God, um, that and to ask for deliverance, that God sends an angel and takes care of things. Sennacherib was the general that brought the army. Sennacherib brought an invasion force of over 200,000 people, which at the time, and even in our time, is an enormous force, but at the time had never been thought of before, a force that large. Um, but in one night, one angel killed 180,000 of their troops, and they had to go back to Assyria. It brought down the king, and in a few decades, it brought down the entire empire, and the empire was no more. So he was there for all that. So Isaiah is writing about that track, the judgment and deliverance in his lifetime, but he's also writing about judgment and deliverance for all eternity, for all people, because this is a salvation epic. And in all the chapters of Isaiah, um, um, all the way from the first chapter to chapter 66, he's talking about the salvation of humanity and the sending of the Messiah. Sometimes he's talking about them both at the same time, but sometimes he's just talking about the Messiah. Um, anyway, I wanted us to look at 1 verses 2 through 4. Listen, O heavens, hear, O earth, for the Lord speaks. I have reared sons and brought them up, but they have revolted against me. An ox knows its owner, and a donkey its master's manger. But Israel doesn't know my people. My people do not. Israel does not know. Excuse me. My people do not understand. Alas, sinful nation, people weighed down with iniquity, offspring of evildoers, sons who act corruptly. They have abandoned the Lord. They've despised the Holy One of Israel. They've turned away from him. We're going to see, as we talk about, as I recommend some of the prophets, that nearly in all the prophets, The issue is not just, or even not primarily, idolatry. It's injustice, what we would call crimes against humanity, or sins of social injustice. Anyway, chapter 2, later in chapter 1, had the famous verse 18, "Come, let us reason together. Though your sins are as scarlet, they will be as white as snow." He's talking about eternal salvation here. And so we know from the very first chapter, we're talking about the dual tracks of Israel's sin and humanity's sin, of Israel's immediate deliverance and humanity's eternal deliverance through the Messiah. In chapter 2, he talks about the last days, in case we're wondering whether he's writing only about, what's about to happen. He talks about the mountain of Jehovah. Many people will come to it. Chapter 2, verse 2. Let's go to the mountain Jehovah, to the mountains of Jehovah, and they will hammer their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and they will never again learn war. He's talking about the Messianic age and the peace that the Messiah brings, the unity that the Messiah brings. There's just so much for us to look at. In Isaiah 14, when he talks about the sign of the virgin giving birth, he's doing a dual track prophecy. He's talking about in the time it takes for a woman to deliver a child, deliverance is going to be brought to us. But he's also prophesying the virgin birth of the Messiah in Isaiah 7:14. But in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 2 through 7, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. His name will be Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father. That's clearly about the Messiah himself. The largest individual section in the book of Isaiah is the suffering servant section that begins in Isaiah chapter 40 and ends in Isaiah chapter 56. And it is primarily about the Messiah. Comfort my people. A voice is crying in the wilderness. That's how it starts. The prophecy about John the Baptist. And of course, it contains Isaiah 53, that passage that we're so familiar with, and that the Ethiopian eunuch was reading whenever he was presented the gospel by Philip. And of course, why was he reading the suffering servant passage? Because later on in the suffering servant passage, we're told that foreigners and even eunuchs are going to be gathered in, and they're going to receive the full measure of blessing when the Messiah comes. And we have this wonderful passage. I just want to read this section from the suffering servant passage from chapter 55, verses 5 through 9. Well, let's go to verse 11. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return to the Lord. He will have compassion on him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. As high as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, my thoughts higher than your thoughts. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return there without watering the earth and making it bear, and furnishing seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word which goes forth from my mouth not return to me empty, without accomplishing what I desire, without succeeding in the matter for which I sent it. I am going to accomplish salvation, and I'm going to offer you salvation. So come and find me while I may be found, God says. Isaiah ends with the going back and forth between visions of the glories of the Messianic age and of punishment. But the final word is of punishment. People who have rejected the Messiah are going to be punished, where their worm shall not die and the fire shall not be quenched. And that's how Isaiah ends. I want to recommend that you take the time to read Isaiah, savor Isaiah. Don't rush through it. Don't get your daily reading done, in 3 days and think you're done. But just enjoy the journey, this epic journey from sin to salvation, and pay attention to the warnings. But more than anything, no one else just celebrates the Messianic age, what the blessings the Messiah will bring the way Isaiah does. So I want to recommend him to you today. Next time we're together, we're going to talk about the book of Lamentations. Thank you for joining me for what is now 10 good minutes. See you next time.